Tackle football has been around for a long time, since the 1800s. In fact, they say the first tackle football game was played in 1859. And now today, tackle football is the most popular sport in our country, and its popularity is indeed spreading across the world. But unfortunately, catastrophic injuries have been a part of the sport since its inception. And we're going to show you why some of those injuries that were occurring back in the 1800s are still occurring today in 2018. Back in 1905, tragically, 19 football players lost their life across the country from football-related injuries. It gotten so bad that the press was filled with very sad and tragic stories of players' catastrophic injuries and deaths. Then it got so bad that then President Theodore Roosevelt threatened to ban the sport altogether if it didn't get its act together and be less barbaric. Back in those days, you could take a running jump in the air with both feet and kick a ball carrier in the face with both feet, and that would be within the rules. It's fine. It was okay. It was very barbaric, and as a result of that, people would literally lose their life from those kinds of behavior. So then President Theodore Roosevelt, who had a son playing in the Ivy League, and so he didn't want this to happen to his own son, so he called the powers that be in tackle football back in those days, Princeton, Harvard, and Yale, to the White House to discuss ways to reform football, or else he was going to ban it, basically save football from itself. So, believe it or not, one of the first things that they banned was the gang tackle. Yep, back in those days, a gang tackle was more like a gang fight. People would lose their life or get serious dislocations of their shoulders and arms and just hideous injuries as a result of the gang tackle. So they eliminated the gang tackle. Another thing they eliminated was the flying wedge, where players would actually form themselves into a V, shoulders tucked into the hip of the offensive player in front of them, and they would propel themselves forward. And if you were a defender and got caught in front of that avalanche of humanity and get trampled underneath that stampede, it'd be like getting ran over by a stampede of wild buffalo, and you could lose your life, and people did indeed get seriously injured and to the point of losing their life. So those are two of the things they got rid of right off the bat. Another thing they did back in those days, if you notice right here, they don't go to the huddle. They just, as soon as the ref spots the ball, he jumps right in the pile with them, spots the ball, they're going at it again. Well, back in those days, it was only 3 downs and 5 yards for a first down. So what they did was they expanded it to 4 downs to get 10 yards. So what that did, it made the game more innovative. Coaches had to come up with more intricate plays to try to get those extra yards. So they get outside, reverse, all kinds of different plays opened up. So now you wouldn't always constantly have 22 people colliding every single play. You'd have 4 people, 3 tacklers, one ball carrier, one-on-one. So it cut down tremendously on the impacts to the brain, definitely, to the head, to the neck, the injuries to the spine from the head-on collisions constantly, okay? So that was one of the things that they did to minimize the physicality of just pounding each other over and over every play. The next thing they did was they instituted the forward pass. So back in those days, you couldn't throw the ball downfield across the line of scrimmage. It was illegal. So they opened that up, so that made the game less brutal, where it's not constantly 22 people crashing into each other every single play. So that minimized it. So then they said, okay, you know what? Let's cut down on wear and tear on each other in practice, and let's get innovative with our technology. So their technology was to create a sled. So now you have your offensive lineman taking on a sled, and rather than taking on a defensive lineman in practice every single day, cutting down on the wear and tear, they drove a sled. That's 1928 New York University. And after that, they went and got this one thing to teach backs how to hit the hole. It reminds me of the mule collar my grandfather would put on his old mule and strap the plow to and plow the field. And that reminds me of that, but that's technology, okay? Their technology. Hit the hole. Now you're cutting down on linemen not hitting other linemen, backs not running into linebackers, and linebackers crashing into the back, so you're cutting down on the injuries, right, in practice. So you're using your technology, okay? So then they innovated and created the first tackle dummy, cutting down on tackling one another in practice. Another great innovation to cut down on the brutality of just beating each other up in practice, so you save it for the game on Saturday, kickoff. Okay, but that's Jim Thorpe back in 1928, tackling the first tackle dummy. Notice his technique. I called it the Thorpe tackle. His head and hips are on the same level. And then they innovated that and went from there. Now, I want you to take note of something. Note how they hit the sled, head and hips on the same level. Note how Jim Thorpe is hitting the tackle dummy, head and hips on the same level. Note how the ball carrier is hitting the hole, head and hips on the same level. So as a result of approaching things like that, they got cracked skulls. And so to remedy the cracked skulls, they created the helmet. This guy's actually hitting the side of a barn with his helmet, with his head. Notice his head and hips are on the same level, but also notice the gentleman behind him in the hats and coats. They're smiling because I guess he didn't crack his skull, so they're envisioning selling millions of helmets because his skull didn't crack. But look at his body posture, okay? Then they got even more innovative and said, okay, yeah, we cut down on hitting each other in practice by tackling a tackle dummy, but it doesn't emulate people. So let's get one that's moving. Then they created this moving tackle dummy, this apparatus. But notice how they're hitting it, okay? All right? And then, okay, so now we're hitting tackle dummies and moving or not. It's not moving like a person, so we still need to scrimmage because it cuts down on missed tackles in the game. We have to actually tackle live bodies. So to do that, they created the apron pad to cover their bodies to cut down on the sheer pounding from one another when they did scrimmage. Okay, it reminds me of like a pizza maker or working in the steel mill when the sparks, keep the sparks off you, so they wear these heavy aprons to protect themselves. So that's what they call it, the apron pads. And so they created all these different pads with their technology to cut down on the injuries because their science was flawed. They still tackled with their arms out, hips back, and head down, which is a physical mechanism that we talked about earlier. So that right there is the problem is their approach to impact, how they're engaging the ball carrier, defender, okay, with to block them, to tackle them, to run through them. Their head and their hips are on the same level. That's their science, right? So their science is flawed. Because then they got the technology and did all those things. Well, we have the technology is advanced. Back in those days, the materials they had to work with was steel, iron, and wood. Well, now we have so many different types of alloys and plastics and rubber and aluminum and every kind of material you can possibly think of that we can make all kinds of things out of. Like, for example, we have a tackle dummy. It's made out of different type of great material that you can hit. But look at his technique. His arms are out, his hips are back, his head is down. And Dartmouth came up with a mechanized tackle dummy. Look at this one just rolling across the field, simulating a ball carrier running down the field, but watch how the defender is engaging him. Arms out, hips back, head down, exposing the crown, exposing the temple, area of the head. The science of tackling and science of engaging is flawed. It's got a design flaw in it. We got to figure out what that is. Okay, and as now you look at it right here, we have all kinds of gear. You know, they came up with shoulder pads and helmets, and they came up with the apron pads and everything. Well, we have every kind of pad you can think of. We have a chest protector. We have the lower back protector. We have the rib protector, we have neck rolls, we have thigh guards, you have every kind of helmet you can think of. We got helmets with air in them, we have helmets with water in them, we have helmets with sensors in them to detect blows to the head, which is good, but our science is not changing, has not advanced beyond what it was back in the 20s and the 30s and even before that. So the science of the approach to making a tackle needs to be looked at, analyzed, okay, identified, what's dangerous about it, eliminate it, and replace it, okay? That is the flaw, okay? So that's what we're going to set ourselves out to do, is to get you to identify, eliminate, and replace the design flaws that are in the very DNA of the sport since its inception. And we're going to find out what those things are, and we're going to eliminate them and replace them, okay? So thanks for your time and your attention, and we'll see you in the next session. And always remember, we play with our mind, not with our head.